Yes, thank you guys for being here. So my name is Eden. I'm on the marketing team at Sunset Learning. And with me, I have Zach, who is an instructor and consultant for Alta 3. He has a lot of technical and communication skills, as well as the experience gained from leading thousands of hours of training across the world. So we are very happy to have him here today to present on how to leverage generative AI to expedite deployments. So thank you guys again for being here. This webinar is being recorded and we will send it out to everyone who registered later this week. So if you, for some reason, have to jump early, you can get the recording. We hope you stay to the end though. We have some super awesome promos and bonuses for you just for being here. So Zach and I are going to present that at the end. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Zach to get started.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for that introduction there. I really appreciate that. Gang, thank you for joining. I came up, how'd that title sound? Leveraging generative AI to expedite deployments. We got about 30 of you here, so it must have sounded pretty good. I want to go over what we're thinking about covering today before we spend about the next 58 minutes covering it. Like we just heard, in addition to a bunch of learning about generative AI, we are also going to hand you lots of giveaways. So things like hands-on labs. So I'm going to demonstrate some great labs. I'm also going to give you access to the same lab environment that you'd actually get access to if you took a training event with us. So you can try out and sort of verify the things that I'm presenting here. We'll also give you a slick sheet of all the different courses and services that are available through Sunset and Alta 3. Before we get to all of that, we want to talk about where AI is and what's happening in the industry. There is so much marketing coming at everybody right now about AI. We keep hearing it's going to revolutionize everything. Well, what is it doing right now? Not what is it going to do? Furthermore, what should our organization be doing? What can we think about doing moving forward to start embracing this paradigm shift? We want to understand as well, if we wanted to turn on our own LLM, our own AI brain in our domain, what do we need? I mean, do we have license agreements we have to sign? Is there certain hardware we have to purchase? Is there teams we have to assemble? And we'll cover all that. Like I already said, I have some demonstrations built. The demos I have are actually switching on an AI brain. Surprisingly easy. So we're going to turn on an LLM. And then I think the interesting part of the demo is writing an AI compliant application. I would call it a RAG application. Maybe you've heard that marketing term. Effectively, how do we write an app to interact with AI brain? How do we make some money off this stuff, get return on investment? I already mentioned at the very end of all this, I have handouts for ways to move forward. Right? I don't want you to leave after now and say, well, that was neat. I guess some of that stuff will happen around here one day. No. Like in the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, how can we help you to start embracing AI in your domain? I will try to keep my eye as best as possible on the chat. If you do have questions and Eden can't answer them, she'll make sure I notice your questions there. So feel free to ask whatever. Gang, poll question. I'm going to pop this up actually in front of you. All right, so I believe in front of you right now should be a poll question that goes something like, what are your takeaways from today? You joined today, what are your expectations? To explore generative AI, Maybe even Zach, can you define that word for us maybe in the next few slides? Learn about requirements for deploying AI solutions within your organization. Try to separate marketing hype from practical application. Get access to hands-on labs. Get access to training programs. Or make contact with a subject matter expert for planning and consulting purposes. Some of this stuff I show you today, you might say, wow, this is awesome. We want this ASAP, and we'd rather not have the ramp up period of putting the expertise together, teams. Sunset and Alta 3 are happy to hand you some SMEs to jumpstart that journey. All right, about 76% of people answered there. Thank you, thank you. I'm going to end that poll. Awesome. I have another poll question coming at you. And I promise this is the last poll question before I start teaching you some things. What's your current familiarity with generative AI and large language models, LLMs? New basic understanding. Knowledgeable, but I haven't applied it in projects yet, or I have hands-on experience deploying or using LLMs. That might be two different questions there, deploying and using. Well, I made it one. All right, that was about 83%. Gang, thanks for, I appreciate you answering these questions. I know I didn't share the last results. I'm going to share this one with you because I think it's interesting. Nobody will be able to see who said what per se. But you can see the majority of us are new or basic, or, maybe we watch some YouTube videos, knowledgeable, but haven't applied in projects is, yeah, I'm keeping up with the news cycle. Have some hands-on experience, maybe one person. All right, so let's go from defining what generative AI is all the way up to how do we actually apply this and use it. So I'm going to just speak generally in this section about, what separates buzz from technical application. We'll talk about some costs. And I mean, it's from a 5,000-foot view. I put this bullet on here because I think this is one of the major takeaways of this section. AI is open. There's no moat around this technology. One of my questions was, do you need some training on this? Do you need an SME on this sort of tech? Right? Because we can all do what I'm about to show you. All of this AI stuff, other than hardware requirements, it's really just a knowledge game at this point. So what separates predictive AI from something like generative AI? That's a new buzzword that's been getting thrown around. Predictive AI is predicting patterns. So for, I don't know, feel like close to a decade now, for a very long time in one of my Python courses, we would classify some pictures, do some real basic training, and try to have a computer make a decision about whether a picture was maybe a marigold or a sunflower or an iris, like some sorting, right? This sort of pattern detection is typically achieved off of, like I just said, hundreds. Here I have thousands or millions of data points, but with a surprisingly small sample size, you can have AI do something like, categorize some pictures. When we talk about generative AI, we're getting into, I want a software that can talk like a human would talk. I want to generate images. And we all saw Facebook's project where we're generating video now. And we're talking billions of training points, right, to do something like create a video. That's generative AI. So where are the generative AI use cases right now? And this is certainly non-exhaustive and it's certainly not uh, the definitive list here. Text, I'm going to show this. I would say everything listed here, marketing, sales, support, writing, note taking, is unbelievably mature and something we could expect AI to handle very well. Things like code, this is where a lot of panic's getting set in. The CEO of NVIDIA saying, hey, coding jobs are over. I don't know about that. Maybe, at least right now, we can see very common code blocks are, achievable with AI. But even with like Chat GPT-4, which is like the latest subscribable AI as a service that you can go for, one of the more common ones. If you'd ask for, even best practice Ansible code or best practice Python code to get generated to do some server operations or something like that, you're going to be disappointed. I mean, you're going to get code that isn't best practice and you're going to have to test before you put into production. Image generation, we've seen, it certainly is impressive until you start looking at hands and notice 6, 7 fingers appearing. Audio, video, 3D, these are all the maturing applications of generative AI, but it's giving you a sense of what the term means. As far as getting into costs and where we're at right now, services like ChatGPT, Google Bard, which just got rebranded, Amazon, are all generally cost per request. If you wanted to start using these right away, I mean, it's get out your credit card, right, and point your APIs in their direction. Where we start, and actually, I would say there's a block, maybe right here, which I don't have listed, which would be turn on your own LLM. The LLM is the brain. And that's the thing that if you go talk to NVIDIA, for example, if you go talk to one of the big software hardware houses, they are going to convince you what you actually need to do is in this dark green or this green block. There is no way you could possibly start using this open source technology software. You gotta, if you're not happy with ChatGPT, exposing your data to ChatGPT, well, you got to train your own LLM then. You got to make your own brain. And to do that, you need consultants, and that's going to be big money. We're talking like $1 million. Not to pay to the consultant per se, but by the time that we're sorting data, making sure data is usable, plugging it into the models, weeks, months later with a team of people, sure, you have a moderately customized LLM that you could switch on within your domain and would give you, the reason you want to do this is because you have custom data you think you need custom responses for. Extensive customization, maybe we're talking, I'm the Acme Chemical Company and I need to formulate new chemical compounds based off of proprietary formulas we already have. Sure. We're getting into the 10 million plus range for that. And again, there's plenty of companies happy to sell you those services. But what I think is left out a lot is that there are, and that's back to my square I drew in between these. there are plenty of LLM brains ready for downloading and using. There is a clearinghouse. It's like the GitHub of LLM brains, open source brains, called Hugging Face. Hugging Face. I'll show it to you in just a little bit. You can go there and download brains that immediately could start providing you with AI services inside of your domain, right? So you don't have these security concerns necessarily, or the operational costs of driving your data across a firewall, of being charged per, on a subscription basis or per request, with some of the AI software as a service tools. So moving into my second section here, the question would become then, well, okay, if we don't want, if this is, open software and we don't need to necessarily subscribe to this stuff, or we don't need a, to fine tune the brain, like we don't need to build our own brain. What's this happy medium that you're describing, Zach? Sort of the best of both worlds, right? So we're going to talk here about, assuming we get our hands on an LLM, we build it or we download one. How do we utilize it? Like, what do we need to set it on to? What do we need to place it on to start using it? I mentioned RAG before, retrieval augmented generation. I'm going to define that and show you an example of a RAG app as well. The idea here, just high up while we're on this slide, RAG would be like, I have a brain that's, an LLM that's pretty clever, but I need to give it more context, right? So when I give it work to do, I'm going to submit additional documents so that it has more context to think more clearly. One of the neat things about, one of the ways you need to tweak your thinking concerning using LLMs would be, or just using AI, is just how fast that they can think, right? It took me a while to realize this, but the context at which a LLM can be brought up to speed is instantaneous, right? So this idea of the RAG app is, hey, you could talk to a non-stateful brain and say, hey, here's a complicated request, but there's a whole bunch of supporting meta, instructions and metadata to help you come up with a more logical or more precise or accurate, desirable solution. And when we talk about accuracy, when we're talking about, accuracy, precision, or the desirability of the results, there's a couple things that would go into that, and I think all of these would carry different weights. When we're talking about, generative AI, there is a we would want to consider the hardware, GPU primarily that we're using or running on. That may carry with it some limitations about the LLM that we could possibly deploy. The software that we're ultimately going to use, tools that might go into actually customizing or building weights onto our model. And then ultimately the level of expertise who's ever driving, the project is going to be responsible for, whether the LLM is desirable or less desirable. I can show you, I pull up here the Hugging Face website. Here it is. I spoke about, there being creating an LLM. We have these different ideas we have these different senses of an LLM can be influenced, and ultimately we end up with something desirable or less desirable. When you build one of these, and if you train a brain, you can post it to Hugging Face. Hugging Face has then a leaderboard. So these are all, would be, different brains posting different levels of accuracy or desirability. And you can determine that off to the right here with an average, an ARC score, a hella swag. There's some other metrics that you can dive into as well. But the one that apparently is testing the best right now is David Kim 205 RIA, the 72 billion V0.05. The version tag at the end is just that. It's a version tag. The 72B is 72 billion parameters. That's speaking directly to things like weights, biases, the vectors that are applied to when you're training. The data that reinforces, positively or negatively reinforces this LLM adds up to 72 billion different points. I think most of these are probably also 200K models, which means they can handle up to 200,000 context parameters. So let me explain to you what I mean by that here. That website I just showed you, where, believe it or not, you truly can just download an LLM for use immediately. I'm going to show you how you'd switch that on and actually use it here to achieve generative AI in, I don't know, within an hour or so. The first thing that you need is a C++ executable called Llama. Llama CPP is the app that's going to run our LLM for us. So all the models I just showed you are fine for running on the Llama software there. The one I have in my presentation here is the Llama 2. That's the version of the software that's out right now. 70 billion, we just said what that was. That's the number of training parameters that go into this thing. 200K. 200K is the context. This is when you talk to this brain. When you say, hey, I want you to do something. You can say like 200,000 words to it. That's where I was saying a moment ago. With this AI stuff, you need to stop thinking of human type limitations. If you gave a human an instruction, it might be a paragraph of maybe they can achieve, here's your work to do in the next 45 minutes, half a day, summarize in a paragraph. It's summarize in 200,000 words, what to do. The GGUF is the latest file extension for the actual LLM model. So it's Llama 2 is the software, and GGUF is the handle of the software we're going to run. So if we wanted to put this together, the majority of the work and what a lot of is revealed in said training classes would be optimizing the Llama software to actually run the brain itself. So this would be GPU, CPU performance tweaking would be step one. And that software is free. You're not signing any license agreements. It's download. Step two This isn't necessarily anything that you have to worry about. It's just something you should know about. Quantization of models is this idea that when an LLM is built, when you have this brain trained up, you can then compress it down. Right? It would be like taking a bitmap to a JPEG. Uh, it's desirable in that it makes the LLM a lot smaller. It's not necessarily desirable in that it makes the training difficult as soon as you do that compression effectively. Your training is over. This would already be done if we were going through the website I just showed you, Hugging Face. They should all be quantized. Next thing would be time to run this stuff, right? So for us, we optimize running Llama 2 and then pull down our favorite brain and switch it on. That would involve looking at the Llama 2 CLI and breaking down all the command flags that you can run. I'll show you a live demo of that here in a moment. Once it's running, or as far as, well, Zach, tell us more about the flags you could throw in order to launch this software. There's a couple different ways you can run it. One would be interactive mode. This might be something like a smart device. I want to sit on top of this thing and have instantaneous communication back and forth with it. Now, something like a 70 billion, 200K model, maybe like 1 billion might be something you might find on like a smart device. But this is just one way to interact with this. It also it doesn't scale. You might think, well, how do I get like 10 or 20 or my whole company on top of this? You don't. Not in this mode, not in interactive mode. Persistent mode is compelling, but it's a memory burn, and you still have a problem maybe of scale. Persistent mode, take what I just taught you, and we're allowing the Llama 2 software to remember, like, have a session effectively. So when you send a prompt is your command. This is the English instruction that I'm going to submit to be the work to be done. You get a response back, and it would be like any other RESTful stateful API. It would be forgotten. In persistent mode, it's remembering previous prompts. Right? So prompt 1, prompt 2, prompt 3. Each response that comes back has the benefit of the Llama software remembering what was said previously. Now, here's the thing. You ain't going to do this because it's too resource intensive. And again, the scaling problem. So what are we going to do? Well, the first thing we're going to do is admit that we need some sort of proxy. We need some middleware between our very expensive server software and LLM brain, so the Llama setup, and our user, right? We want to scale this out to customers effectively. So we're going to make customers interact not through some C++ program, but through a little Python app. Why does that get better? For so many reasons. Number one, I'd be willing to guess at least 50% of everybody in this class right now is probably knows Python, like at least. All right, so we could all imagine ourselves writing a Python app where if we just had an API defined for us, like, well, here's the Llama API, here's how to submit a question to it. We could design really neat apps. But the other thing the Python app is going to give us is the ability to cache and store the session. I don't want to burden my clever brain, my llama stack, with persistent memory of communication. That can be submitted. Remember, 200K, I have 200,000 characters to potentially submit on every request. So I could tell my Llama 2 software, just run in server mode, which is just present an API, like an HTTP-based API. Run in server mode, and we're going to send a fully formed request. We're going to treat this like a REST session. I'll send you a fully formed request on every submission, every prompt. What that means is this person might say, hey, I want service done on my vehicle. And that's remembered by the Python app, right? This person wants service on their vehicle. Great. When would you like to bring the car in? They may say, next week. Next week, Y, is added to X, the information that was cached from the last request. And it's not Y that's submitted. It's now X plus Y gets submitted. So on the second request, that Python app says, yeah, I have previous context here. It's not just next week. It's they want to bring their car in now next week. And it's not just that. It would be like, I want to bring my car in. You asked them when. They said next week. Zach, are you saying that the Python app could submit the history of the chat conversation? Well, I guess that's what I'm saying. Why do we like that? Well, now I can scale a very cheap Python app to infinity and beyond. That's my little containerized services that scale on demand, right? I can also roll out new features as I imagine them into my little Python app. Right? And I don't have to touch the llama stack. That's staying static there. So there is a API, a Pythonic API built into the Llama 2 library that's made just specifically for this, just for client bindings. So this becomes, if we're thinking about a pathway forward, it's get that stack turned on, design maybe an example application, and then encourage, devs to start building really clever apps or more features into your customer-facing Python app that are ultimately continually utilizing, the same APIs. It's when you start to detect a failing in this LLM that you've downloaded, that's when we start worrying about, okay, now let's start looking at maybe training your own LLM with your own customer data. But, my goodness, gang, I was thinking my background's in telecom, right? So I'm thinking here, okay, suppose I am a telecom giant and I want my AI to pull apart my PCAPs, right? There's wirecap traces. Or I want it to look at, they won't even be a PCAP form. I just want to look at traces. And I want to identify, failures. I can probably have that service turned on by next week. I don't need to train an LLM maybe immediately to start doing that. There's a context that can be provided in that massive set of characters that says, hey, here's the rules of the road. Even if you're not trained to understand SIP, the protocol that makes the phones ring, right? Here are the rules of SIP, or here are the number codes or the response codes, or here are the situations that we flag that, are undesirable. 200,000 is a lot of characters, right? But in my mind, 1 million, 10 million and beyond is a lot of money, and maybe leading with hey, that's the cost of entry is just doesn't strike people as a way to embrace AI right away. We can run in server mode. I already talked about this. If you run in server mode, there's your powerful API where you submitting queries from your Python app to Llama, and Llama's giving you responses. We just want to see this in action. So we're going to, there's nothing new on that slide. I'm going to show you this, a demonstration of this. Feel free to ask questions. I'll probably wait until I'm done demoing to answer them all. And there I have, takeaways from this. I'm going to write a Python app that acts as a receptionist, right? And I will tell you, before I started researching on this a year or two ago, and exploring AI, I thought for sure, like, oh, okay, in order for AI to act as, a receptionist at a hair salon, you would have to, step one would be teach the brain to be a receptionist at a hair salon. That couldn't be further from the truth. The sum total of information available on the internet, already available for download. We just have to train that brain how to think. I would say it's more akin, think of it this way. There is a pool of, we're trying to fill a job vacancy. And whether we want a human, and we're going to interview a human to do that, and then teach the human to, here's how you be the salon receptionist. I mean, that's awesome if somebody came in the door and said, hey, I worked at a salon desk for the last 10 years. Great, you have a head start. But are you telling me that we couldn't just take somebody that's cheerful and somebody that has good communication skills and somebody that, is enjoys facing customers generally, and we couldn't train them to do the job? I'm certain we could. So yes, we're focused on maybe scheduling a hair appointment. Keep in mind that I think this covers a unbelievable amount of case uses that companies are looking to maybe have services like this, like tomorrow-ish. So let me do a demo, and I'm going to talk through the demo. Everything I'm showing here is ultimately free, short of hardware requirements, which I need to talk about, but I will as soon as I'm done showing you this video here. Okay, so right here, believe it or not, what I just kicked off was the Llama software. And if you take a training class with us, there's about a day we will spend on how to get Llama up and running and how to set the flags that make it interface with your GPU and CPU the best. But here I've already started my app, my Python app. This is just giving you a sense of how it works. So it starts and my little bot says, hey, can I have your name? And I said, my name's Frank. I was, okay, how can I assist you? And I say, I'm hoping to learn about your menu. It says, no problem. Here's our menu. By the way, we have some other services. And they say, can I come in Saturday to get the haircut? Unfortunately, we're closed. Okay, great. Can I come in Saturday at 2? The bot checks the Google Calendar, is able to tell, yeah, okay, We have availability there, or whatever calendar, wouldn't matter, whatever API is available. Great, time to book an appointment. At this point, an upsell is attempted. You want a head massage or hair wash in addition to your haircut. It looks like the user buys into the head massage and they say, great, thanks for scheduling the appointment. So that, what goes into that? What does that little Python app look like? It's surprisingly simple. What I have up at the top is, except for import requests, everything else is standard library. So already it's Python 101, pretty basic Python stuff. Maybe an API class, Python 201. That's describing where my Llama model is hanging. That's the, when you start it in server mode, it has this RESTful API that you can target. We're just targeting that there. Chat. Right there, I said we're gonna use like a RAG-based app. Right there, I am receptionist beta txt. Those are the instructions that I'm going to hand to the brain to make it behave the way I want it to behave. There's part of the context where I can say, hey, separate to this project, somebody typed up how you behave as a salon receptionist. Things like pricing might go into there, things like, words not to use, all that sort of stuff. Formatting prompt. This is everything you have there is more weighting. When the chat completion has to do with the weighting business. That there is just printing to the screen. That's what we ultimately dump to the screen to give the user a sense of the back and forth. The temperature, top K, top P, end predict, stop, and stream. That's all information that we're attaching to our request. So the request that gets sent ultimately to our Llama API, that's the information it wants. Things like top K, top P, end predict, temperature, all have to do with like how creative we want the response to be. How strict do you want how literal do you want the prompt to be interpreted, and how, or versus how creative do you want to be in a response that you get back? Those are pretty middle of the road settings that I have there. The JSON dump business is, that's just standard library stuff. That's just taking our string data and packaging it there as real JSON. Because right here is where we actually send it. That data there is where it says data equals data there. So this is where we're actually request.post. We're sending an HTTP post to Llama with the weights, how inventive we want the response to be, the prompt that we're sending in. This would be what we get back. We're stripping out what comes back and just printing it to the screen there. This is just syntax stripping, nothing to making it pretty before we dump it to the screen, right? Again, what's compelling about this is the moat, if there's a moat around this technology, is an expensive GPU. You can rent these on Amazon. That's one way to do it. Or you can shell out the bucks probably around 50 grand right now. You can rent them alternatively. That is what you're on the hook for. That, and then, like I said, turning the software on. This idea that, you need a custom LLM trained up, is the big price tag that certainly some companies, yes, are going to need, no doubt. But as far as, I would say small, medium-sized businesses, being able to, this is more than enough there. This is going through it, an example. Again, here you can see the user, their JSON question mark. I was trying to get it to do something that it's not supposed to do, and it didn't. It behaved the way it was supposed to. Now my application, I have set up to write out, to a text file what was learned from a particular customer interaction. So there you saw, Sally was the customer, and Sally wanted, whatever appointment, haircut, with a time there. This piece is completely subjective. I mean, the data that you collect and the format you put it in, and whether you write it out to a file or fire it off to some database somewhere, I mean, this is make it your own, right? But to that point, so far, what do you need? It's, again, ultimately, after you check some hardware requirements, you're fine-tuning, turning on your software, and then ultimately your brain. And as long as you're running this inside your firewall, everybody's happy. All right, so that's an example. And by the way, gang, if you're thinking, well, that's kind of neat, Zach, some of the stuff that you obviously don't have time to go into, I'm kind of interested in. Well, that's where my hands-on labs come in. Because if you're thinking, Zach, there is no way you could possibly give us access to what we just looked at, I will. My lab environment, I guarantee, will work for everyone. I saw we had some folks connected in Central America, some folks in Europe, some people close to me in Pennsylvania. It'll just work for you. If you're watching this post-class, I want you to do my labs, right? So even if you're watching this video after things have wrapped up, reach out to Sunset Alt to 3 if the timer's expired on the lab link, and we're happy to let you walk through this. That will include turning on Llama, downloading an LLM, and actually running through that Salon app that we just saw. Here's the leaderboard when I took the screenshot. It's changed. The average we saw is up in the 80s now. Okay, I only took this 3 or 4 months ago. Wasn't that long ago. This stuff is rapidly getting better, right? The technology is increasing. People are getting better and releasing better open source, free, royalty-free LLMs. The metrics there: average, ARC, HeliSwag, MMLU, truthful QA, so on and so forth. I told you when we saw this before, there were some other metrics available. Don't get too hung up in those. Just know they are generally higher the number, the better. And each one represents a different type of test. So, for example, a truthful QA or an MMLU is, it might be, well, we run 5 questions against this thing, and we determine how accurate was the response. Did it lie based on a question it couldn't answer? Just tell us. That sort of thing is how they come up with those metrics there. All right, so I am in my last 10 minutes here. What I want to cover in this last section is training consulting services that are available to you and just giveaways and other pathways forward. Whether it's consulting services or group training, talk to your Sunset Learning rep. Right? They know how to get a hold of Alta 3 and myself in order to get you paired up with the right solution. If we were talking about what a consulting path looks like, it may be, Zach, we want services turned on in a week or two, right? Which happy to do. It could also be something that starts with a roadmap planning, where we're actually saying, okay, what are the goals? Why do you think you might need an LLM trained? What is the data then you have available? Where is the data available? Validating data, making sure that it's usable. Putting together hardware, software platform. Trying to figure out what the rollout is going to be for turning on services. Ultimately, then, fine tuning after you have, if you do train your own brain, you're going to find some things lacking. Right? Let's say we trained a mind to handle all of our telecom call flows, right? It's getting inevitably some call flows wrong. There might be some modifications that we need to make there. Operations and scaling. So do we need to worry about, limiting types of requests that can be made to a service that we switch on? How can we, moving forward, make the service better and simpler, just a better customer experience? All of that, regardless of where you're at, we'd be happy to help you with. I have 2 questions, and then I'll give you the link to the free labs. I'm holding back on that because I have a feeling that's what everybody's after. Let me pop up a question here for you. 2 questions. Reflecting on what you learned today, what do you see as the biggest challenge in deploying generative AI LLMs within your organization? Lack of technical experience, uncertainty about costs and return on investment, ensuring data privacy and compliance, or integrating AI into existing workflows and systems? A is sort of a general, Zach, this is all new to me. Maybe until I saw your example, it's didn't know what was possible or how easy it was. 2 speaks for itself. That's a money thing, right? 3 is a big deal, but we did talk about 3 a little bit today. It's, well, if you're concerned about data, run it in your own domain. This isn't, it's a pricey graphics card and some free software. Integrating AI into existing workflows and systems. Sure, and we talked about that a little bit as well, though, would largely be, it's an API game. All right, thanks everybody who answered there. One more question for you. Oh, and the next one's at the end. Next one's at the end. Gang, just moving forward, upcoming enrollment classes. So if you reach out to Sunset and you were interested in taking any of these classes, they can help you out. Zero code AI solutions, prompt engineering, and NLP, open source generative AI, application development with AI for Python application development are all classes that are going to be running. We'd love to see you in. The one we just looked at right now was open source generative AI. This one right here, May 7th through the 10th. Was the snippet of labs you're going to be invited to do, as well as the material that I talked about came from largely that class. Last poll question. Which of the following might best fit your organization's needs? We want AI assistance ASAP and are not concerned with tuning. We just need to secure our queries. That is to say, we need to stop employees from putting our data into ChatGPT. We want a tuned model, so we do need to build our own LLM. We think we have case uses where that would be appropriate. We probably need a finely tuned model, as in we have lots of proprietary data. What we're doing is not generic case use and can't be summarized in 200,000 characters. We already have a generative, or more training would be helpful because we're not really sure. Or we already have generative AI solutions deployed and we just interested in seeing what's out there and how things are working. Got about half of the people responded to that one. Maybe a few more would be great. All right, so I promised links on the next slide. I know I've been teasing that for a minute. Thanks, gang. Looking at how you get hands-on with this stuff. There is a link I created for you. Sunset worked with us on this, live.alta3.com/groups/fancy tigers wandered is available now. You're going to get prompted for your name and email address. Put your corporate email address in there for me on the prompt. Labs will take about an hour to complete. Largely what I demoed in 5 minutes, you're going to be able to get hands-on with. If you get stuck, you can reach out to Sunset or myself. Respond to any of the emails you received. I want you to be successful and have fun with this, but I think you'll be good. It's fairly intuitive, the service. Gang, I think that's about it for me. Eden, did you have anything else that you wanted to pass on to everybody?
Yeah, thank you so much for that awesome presentation and demo. If you guys liked today's webinar, show Zach some love in the chat. We also wanted to give you a discount on some of these AI classes that are good follow-ups to this webinar. So there's 3 classes here on the slide that you can get 20% off. You just have to use code AI2024 at checkout, and you can use it for any date that we have on our website, but you do have to use the code by the end of April. All of the dates are guaranteed to run on our website, so there's no chance of us canceling last minute on you. So we hope to see you in class again soon. And Zach, there were some questions in the Q&A if we have a couple seconds for that.
Yeah, we definitely do. And I'm sorry, I should have had a better eye on the questions there. Let's see.
Yep, so the first one is it the same LLMA? I think I don't know if he's talking about Llama or a LLM as Meta or Facebook is using.
Oh, okay. So same the Llama software that runs the brains. That was originally written in Python and then rewritten in C++. That's the Facebook sponsored invested project. Beyond that, folks are creating their own brains. So for example, the Hugging Face website is, kids, college kids, folks, players in industry, consultants, research organizations that are building their own LLMs and saying, we trained this off of data that was available online. Sure, you can have it. In fact, a lot of what that Hugging Face website is about at this point is, as a research organization, showing off how well maybe you can train a brain. So it's same. It's not what Facebook is running, but it's the same server software, if that makes sense, is written by them. Gang, thank you so much. I think that's about all the time we have for. Thanks for joining. I hope we do get to see you in a training event.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We will send the recording out to you by the end of the week, and we hope to see you in one of these classes soon. Have a great day.
If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.